I just realized that that whole thing I just filmed, which was like pretty much almost to the end of the whole book review, was filmed in slow motion. However, do not despair because I almost had a mental breakdown. I was able to fix it in post. So we're back, baby. I will, however, allow you to enjoy this little clip of me eating some chips in slow motion.
What people say, because
I'm sorry, it's a mess. Look, I have nothing more to say to you. Sometimes we just struggle, okay? Okay, people, let's talk about some books. January and February was an impressive reading month for me personally. I read 9 books, which I feel like is the most I've probably read in 2 months. But there were some great books in this little 2 month span, and I thought we could chat about them because I love hearing about what books other people are reading. It kind of helps me figure out like what I want to read next. And so, yeah, I thought it might be interesting to share a couple of them, or all of them in this case. I also read 2 memoirs, which I won't rate, so we'll talk about those first. They were both really interesting and I would really recommend them, but I feel weird like reading a memoir because it's about someone's life and I feel like I don't want to pass judgment over that. So the first memoir was The Art Thief by Michael Finkel. This was such an interesting story. It is about Breitweiser, who stole over $2 billion worth of art in broad daylight from museums with his girlfriend Anne Catherine. And the unique thing about him is that he never sold the art for profit. He would keep it, hoard it in his attic that he lived in, like in his mother's house. And he just appreciated the art. He loved the art. He fell in love with it. His whole motive was to go to a museum, find a piece of art that he emotionally connected with, steal it, and then bring it back to his attic. So it asks really interesting questions around the ethics of stealing, the value of art, the beauty of art. You know, is he someone that is considered morally a better judge of character because his motives for stealing were different from others? But it also, you know, as the story continues, we start looking at, you know, elements of addiction, explores relationships, you know, a bond between a mother and a son, between a girlfriend and a boyfriend, you know, and kind of the lengths we're willing to go to protect those people. I think that this book took like 10 years to write. And honestly, some of the crimes, just the way that they were conducted, how they got away with them, like had me shocked. I was like, I cannot believe that this actually happened. So it's a very interesting story, and it poses a lot of really interesting philosophical questions, and it's really well told, and I would highly recommend reading it. This is something that my husband actually picked as like a date night activity for him and I. And so if you're looking to read a book with your partner, I would highly recommend this one because I feel like it's very interesting for most people to read about. So yeah. Also another book club pick, this is one I do with the girls, is I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I've been wanting to pick this up for a while and just haven't found the time for it, so I'm really glad that they picked this because I was really curious about her story. I mean, I know her from iCarly, but I didn't really know much more about her other than that. And it was really interesting to see how different she is from that character. This is a story that is obviously, you know, deals with a lot of difficult subject matters, but I feel like it touches on it in a really thoughtful way. I feel like her writing is very accessible. It's very simple but impactful, and I feel like she does a really good job of articulating what she was feeling in the moments that were difficult, even from a really young age. The way that she's been able to remember a lot of like what's happened in her life and express it, and just following her journey, you know, I think it's a really powerful story, and I think that I'm very inspired by how vulnerable and brave she's been in sharing her story, and I think that I took away a lot of lessons in what it means just to be human, you know, and that we all go through things. What the heck? Did a bug just fall on me? What was that? Really recommend reading this. I think it's a very honest portrayal and look at what it's like to be a young person, what it's like to be a young person in the spotlight, what it's like to have a confusing, nuanced relationship with your mother, and all those complicated feelings that come with that, what it's like to reckon with those things after someone has passed away. Yeah, what it's like to have to grow up in an industry that's also asking you to kind of bend and mold to what they think you are. Yeah, it deals with a lot of like big subject matter, but again, like I feel like she's done a really good job at making it very digestible and very like accessible for people. So yeah, my dog is outside. Hold on 1 second. Protect me from the bugs, Noodle. You gotta protect me from them. Okay, up next, Anatomy of an Alibi. This was another book club pick, but this was for the one that I go to. This is like a mystery murder situation. It's told through multiple POVs, and I did like this book. I probably gave it like a 3.5. Was an entertaining read, but I felt like it was a little confusing at times because there were so many POVs, and because of that I also felt like I didn't really get to know any of the characters super well, and therefore hard to like feel really emotionally connected to them. I also did kind of work out the ending before it happened, so I feel like when that happens it kind of takes away a little bit of that like moment, which I love. But this book does ask really interesting questions about what it means to be a good person. So it deals with a lot of family dynamics, the mystery, social statuses, power, money, greed. So yeah, it was a good book, but probably like 3.5. Okay, what's next? Oh, Two Twisted Crowns. I read this at the very beginning of January. Again, I'd probably give this one like a 3.5. I did like it. It's like a continuation of One Dark Window. And so, like in this book, they're still continuing to try and collect all the 12 Providence cards and break the curse that is over the castle town, over the realm. And again, like I think I said last time, like I feel like Rachel Gillick does a really good job of like creating these really like well thought out concepts. I think I was looking for like a few more twists and turns in this book, and I think it felt like a little like long at times, and something about the romance, I don't know, it just doesn't hit the way that I wanted to, but that's okay. Not every book is meant for you, and I know a lot of people love this book, and I'm so happy that you do. But yeah, for me personally, I think it was like a 3.5. Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. This is by Heather Fawcett, and I was like almost tempted to put off reading this just because I didn't want to like leave the world. I enjoyed the first two books so much that I was like, oh, don't let it be over. But then I wanted to read it while that was still fresh in my mind. This one for me was probably like a 4.5. I still really loved it, but the first two I was completely sucked in. This one is like a continuation of their story. We're more in Wendell's world in this book, and I don't want to give like too much away, so I won't like get into the plot, but it was still really fun. Like it was interesting because we've delved into a completely different part of it, and I feel like Emily goes on a different kind of journey in this one. Like in the first two books, I felt like she was very confident and self-assured, and in this one I felt like she struggled more with like trusting herself and like following her gut a little bit more. But yeah, I still really loved it. I would highly recommend this series. I think it's so fun. I will say, like, sometimes the little cliff notes about like the scientific terminology or like adding the explanation of certain like artifacts, it makes it hard to read a little bit sometimes because you feel like you're constantly like drawn out of it. Like you're reading the story and then you're like looking down to find like the small note that says like what this thing is. So at times I felt like maybe a little less of that would have been just a little easier to read, but regardless, I love it. I think it's such an interesting format for a book, and I love the analytical research aspect to it. it's a very like scientific approach to a very magical situation. So yeah, I thought that was really fun. Okay, now we're on to Kindle. I'm trying to go fast because I don't want my camera to die. One of the books that I read this month that was an absolute 5-star read for me was Wayward Girls by Susan Weeks. It is set during like the 1960s in Buffalo, and it follows the story of Maren, who is sent to the Good Shepherd Institute, which is run by Roman Catholic nuns, and it is a place for wayward girls or problematic girls in society. And whilst this is a fictional story, it is based on a lot of true events that happened at the time. So many girls were sent there for a multitude of reasons, one of them being pregnancy out of wedlock, just being disagreeable in nature. In Maren's case, she's sent by her mother as a form of protection because her home has become unsafe due to her mother's like new husband. So she gets sent there and she meets a bunch of girls who are also all on their own journeys, and really at its core I think it's a story about friendship, about survival, about women's rights. These girls were abused within the system. It looks at predators within the system. All of the girls were forced to work in a laundry, which really did happen, to make money. And another big thing that happened during this time was a lot of the pregnancies. A lot of the women were forced to give up their children for adoption. Their rights were signed away. There were falsified papers during the time. I think there was estimated like 1.5 to 4 million women in the United States lost their children to unauthorized, irregular, or forced adoption. So it deals with a lot of dark subject matter, and it's honestly shocking that this happened and that so many women had to go through this system and was so mistreated by people who really should have been vouching for them and wanting the best for them and taking care of them and ensuring their safety. But it does show the misuse and abuse of power within the system, but it also shows like how strong female friendship and bonds are and how important they are and how you can get through so much if you are able to lean on one another. And it was just a very well told story. It's not all dark. There are moments of lightness and happiness and searching for the bright, and there are moments of humor and funniness and love and joy, and we just see them sort of struggle but also like have so much strength. And it was just, it was a really interesting look at this period in time. So if you're interested or fascinated or want to know more about sort of what happened, I think this is a great book for that, because it really does touch on some of those real life circumstances. But obviously it is a fictional story. 5 stars from me. Really just a great book in my opinion. Okay, something else I read on Kindle, and I'm nervous because I know this might be a little controversial. Now we're going to talk about Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Okay, this is a novel about space, which already I was like, I don't know about this because I don't love things about space. There's something very eerie about space, and I feel like whenever there's a story that's set in space or about space, it usually means something's gone horribly wrong, and that just gives me anxiety because it just seems like a terrifying situation. So already I was a little like, ugh. The book starts off as well with like the most catastrophic event, and I think because of that, like I didn't know any of the characters yet, and so it felt like I couldn't really understand what was happening. It felt very like in my face, and it made it hard to care as well, because it's like, obviously if there's a horrible thing happening, I would never want it to happen to anyone, but I wasn't emotionally connected to any of the characters because it happened at the very beginning. It's almost like reading the end of the book first. And so also I just had this sense of unease the entire time reading the book, because it's like you already know sort of what's going to happen. And so then it's like, well, why would I invest too much time in this, or relationship or person, if it's gonna be destroyed at the end? So I felt a little guarded then, because it was like I couldn't fully accept I couldn't fully like allow myself to get too attached because I knew again that it was gonna like implode. But I do feel like the book was really beautifully written, and there are a few passages in there that I thought were very touching, and I loved the relationship between the two main characters. It follows the story of Joan, who is one of the first women selected to participate in like the NASA program, and she's attending with a bunch of other candidates and other women, and she falls in love with another woman who, again, during this time, it was not like a very accepted or widely talked about thing. And so we really follow her journey through becoming a leader in the space world, but also figuring out who she is and what her identity is outside of just being, you know, this person that loves space. This is, again, another quote from Atmosphere that I thought was just beautiful, like beautifully written. Like, oh, like just feels like poetry. The air I'm breathing is the same air your ancestors breathed. Even what is in my body right now, the cells, the air, the bacteria, it's not only mine. It is a point of connection with every other living thing, made up of the same kinds of particles, ruled by the same physical laws. When you die, someone will bury you or turn your body into ashes. Eventually, you will return to the earth. You already are a part of the earth. What better reason do we have to take care of this earth and everything on it than the knowledge that we are of one another? Oh my God. Stunning. Anyways, there's a lot of beautiful passages in this book, and so for that, I think it's really worth reading. It's just, yeah. And it is a beautiful story. It's a story about love and friendship and finding yourself, I think. Finding out who you are as a single little thing inside of a big, giant world filled with so much. People we meet on vacation. Okay, I love Emily Henry. Love her. But this was one where I actually think I enjoyed the movie more than the book. Is that terrible to say? I just felt like the movie had a little more clarity and the story made a little more sense to me. And I feel like some of the parts that I didn't really believe in the book, they omitted in the movie or changed in the movie. So I was like, okay, this like makes more sense to me now. It was still a really fun read, and I think they did a great job of the adaptation, honestly. I would probably give it like, yeah, probably like a 3, but it's about Alex and Poppy who meet in college and agree to go on a summer trip every year. Poppy is a very type B person, Alex is a very type A person, and it's kind of a story about their friendship, their journey as like people who start out not liking each other to figuring out they kind of like bring out the best in each other and sometimes the worst, and it's just navigating their relationship, and that's kind of the story. Okay, I think that's it. Oh, thank the Lord. I always think that these videos are going to be simpler to film. Like, I just sit down, share my thoughts, and then I'm like, wait, what was the book? Who wrote it? What were the characters' names? What happened in the book? I mean, I always know whether I loved her or I didn't. Like, I remember the feeling. That's always really intense for me. But sometimes, like, trying to explain it to somebody else, like what the book is about, I'm like, oh, damn. Gotta refresh my memory. So I was just gonna say thank you for bearing with me if you got through this video. Please know I put my heart and soul into it, and I suffered greatly for you to have this video. But yeah, thank you for listening. If you care, if you don't care, I appreciate any and all of you. And yeah, share some recs if you have anything that you think is interesting, worth the read. I always love hearing people's opinions on books. Yeah, thank you. I'll see you next time.